On October 30th, 2020, in Reynoldsburg, Ohio, 26-year-old Dominique Carpenter called 911 to report that she and her live-in boyfriend, Mohammed Kaba, 33, were in a physical fight, and she stabbed him at their home in the 1100 block of Woodwind Drive. During the altercation, she would tell police she went into the kitchen and retrieved 2 knives. She would say that Kaba began walking toward her with his arms at his side, telling her to stab him. She did, in the chest, and he fell back onto the couch. He would die later that morning at Mount Carmel East Hospital. Carpenter was arrested and held in jail on a $1 million bond. In May 2023, her trial for murder would begin. 3 days into the trial, Carpenter would take a plea agreement with prosecutors, right before lawyers were to make closing arguments to the jury. Carpenter did not testify, but recordings of her 911 call and a body cam video of her speaking to officers were played in court. 2 forensic psychologists would also testify at the trial, 1 each for the defense and 1 for the prosecution. The issue is whether or not Carpenter was suffering from battered woman syndrome, sometimes also known as battered spouse or battered person syndrome. Her case was put over to July 12th for sentencing. That was then set over to August. In August, a new lawyer appeared for Carpenter. He wanted the plea set aside and to have a new trial. He would say that her former lawyer was incompetent and that Carpenter could never be convicted had she taken the stand. The judge did not allow the plea to be withdrawn and balked at the idea that Carpenter's previous lawyer was incompetent or ineffective. There was a very heated exchange between the new defense lawyer and the judge. The judge went so far as to say that he planned to file a complaint against the lawyer for his remarks in the courtroom. She was sentenced to 11 to 16 and a half years. The court will consider her for early judicial release after 5.5 years, and she would be credited for 400 days in jail that she spent before she was able to make that bond. There are several issues here. First being the complaint Judge Brown says he will file against the defense lawyer. This will not be the first time this judge is involved in a complaint against a lawyer relating to that lawyer's behavior in court. He may be right, he may not be. It will be up to a disciplinary hearing to determine. However, that kind of exchange over an important motion could be grounds for an appeal if the appellate court finds that the defense lawyer was not able to appropriately represent his client during the motion. We're not privy to why Carpenter decided not to testify during her trial and why instead she took a plea agreement. It may well have been a solid choice. It's not usually a good thing to have the defendant take the stand, but if she wanted to convince the jury that she suffered from battered woman syndrome, absent other evidence or witnesses to testify to that, she would have to take the stand. In the end, there may or may not be an appeal in this case, and we'll update you if we learn that one is making its way through the justice system. Potentially, the real issue here is battered person syndrome. What is it, and what does it do for defendants? Well, it is both a psychological condition that is a subcategory of PTSD, and it is a subset of the legal defense of self-defense. In some cases, battered person syndrome can result in an acquittal, or it can, just like self-defense, reduce the crime that the defendant is convicted of, from murder to involuntary manslaughter, for example. That will depend on the circumstances, and each case is going to be different. Battered spouse syndrome happens after a period of domestic violence. The abuse can be physical, emotional, or psychological, or most frequently a combination of different types of abuse. The victim can often fear for his or her life, has been fearful for an extended period of time. Their performance suffers, and they begin to develop physical and mental health issues. Some examples might be that they begin to dislike their bodies, their sleep becomes inconsistent, they may become withdrawn, forgetful, easily emotional. A psychiatrist or psychologist will typically examine the victim to determine whether or not battered spouse syndrome is a factor in a criminal case. Moving away from the medical to the legal, battered spouse syndrome is a full or partial defense, usually for murder, but it can be applied to other violent offenses as well. It has sometimes even been applied to nonviolent offenses like fraud to explain why someone has followed a partner to commit wrongdoing. It's not always a complete defense. That means that just because a person has battered person syndrome does not mean they would be found not guilty of murdering the abusive partner. That can only be determined by whoever is trying the facts of the case, a judge or a jury. More often than not, it is a partial defense, which means that it knocks the crime down from a very serious one, like murder, to a less serious one, like voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. If you find yourself in these circumstances, it's best to get the advice of a defense lawyer as soon as possible. Say nothing to anyone until you've spoken to a lawyer. It's tempting to want to explain yourself like Carpenter did, but that might just find you in hot water. In any event, there are several things that a person experiencing abuse can do that can help. The best, obviously, is to leave to a safe place, but we understand that's not always easy. It can be very dangerous, in fact, and it can feel terrifying, and some victims need a lot of support and time before they're prepared to leave. Ideally, people can get help, become safe, and begin to heal long before it becomes a murder or a manslaughter charge. If you are experiencing domestic violence or know someone who is in the United States, you can contact these numbers for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They can help. In Canada, sheltersafe.ca, the My Plan Canada app, the Kids Help Phone, the Assaulted Women's Helpline can all help. And these are their numbers. In the UK, this is the number for the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. In Canada, as in many nations, services to people experiencing domestic abuse are scattered through provinces and local jurisdictions. You can help advocate for a national domestic violence helpline rather than the mishmash of localized helplines and resources by contacting your member of parliament and letting them know that a national helpline can help reduce detection, streamline services, and increase help to victims of violence. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next Thursday. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.